Hello and welcome to the garden. In a previous video I showed some of the damage that had occurred to the pear blossom from the rather cold nights we've had recently. Now that bitter cold weather has thankfully passed and it looks like things will slowly warm up over the next few days. I know there's a couple of cold nights ahead at the weekend, but nothing like we had a few days ago. Now, the pear blossom was one of the things I was most worried about, so that's what I looked at first. But since then I've been wandering around the garden and I've spotted some more damage, and unfortunately I think some of the things here, they're looking quite bad and I may well have to re-sow and replace them. So here are some young rocket seedlings. Now these were planted out a little while ago and they've been under some mesh. Now normally these would be entirely happy here. They've just sort of got established and then they were hit by that cold weather. Now that has caused considerable damage, at least to the outer leaves. So these leaves here are entirely desiccated and there is still signs of life in the center of some of the seedlings. Some are looking a lot worse than others. I suspect that if I leave them in, they may well recover and grow through this damage. Just to be sure though, I have re-sown, and if I find that I've got something else I could put in this spot, I may well grub these out and just replace them with the new ones. But it is unusual here, at least at this time of year, to see this kind of damage. What is rather more upsetting is the damage to these Alderman peas. Now these looked fantastic when they went in and they were just growing away, getting a grip on the netting here and doing very well. But again, a great many of these leaves have been quite severely damaged by the cold, and these are just entirely dried out, and that's as much the cold wind as it is the cold itself. Now these peas are reasonably tolerant of cold conditions, but the temperature went down rather lower than we would normally expect in April. Of course we'd expect a light frost, but not the severe cold that we had, and that was coupled with a very drying wind, and it's that freezing cold wind that has dehydrated the leaves here and resulted in so much tissue damage. Now again, some of these look worse than others, and it may be that these can grow through this damage. They're not looking too happy at the moment, so what I'm going to do is re-sow these, and I will make a decision on them a little bit later. If by the time the new batch is coming through these are recovered and are looking good, then that's fine. Otherwise I will grub these out and replace them. There is also quite a bit of damage to some of our other peas. So this one is purple podded pea, and lots of these leaves have had it. These have been entirely dehydrated, but some of this foliage looks okay, and I'm more hopeful that these will grow out of it. These are just that little bit shorter in stature at the moment, and that may be why they have fared rather better. So those next door, well, they've got some damage, but I think it's not too significant. These growing tips here are still looking quite healthy. So I think with these peas we might just get away without having to replace them. I will be sowing more peas this month anyway, and if these get any worse, then I can always replace them, but I think these are going to be okay. The Alderman peas I'm not so sure about. They are looking very sad indeed. So I'm in one of the greenhouses here, and this is damage that I've never seen here before. This is almost certainly again from the cold. These leaves are rather desiccated, some of them just around the edges. This leaf will be okay. This one is rather badly damaged, and I am a little bit concerned about whether there may be damage to these small clusters of very, very small grape flowers. Time will tell. What I may do with this one, ordinarily you might pinch out these shoots a couple of leaves beyond the first bunch. What I think I might do this year is allow them to go on to produce a second bunch in case these have indeed been damaged. Some of them don't look great. This one looks like it's a little darker than its neighbours, and I wonder if that could be a sign of some damage to this cluster. In our other greenhouse we have a muscat of Alexandria vine, and that one I think has fared rather better, and that's because it's a lot slower to get going. That one really needs warmth to get going in the spring and to ripen the crop later in the year, and it's always a little bit borderline as to whether we're going to get a great crop of grapes off of that. But this time that's actually an advantage because the shoots are only just starting to break out on the other vine, whereas these have all been exposed to the cold. You can see on another leaf up here quite extensive browning of the leaf, and I think this is frost damage. Now, thankfully, I was able to put some protection over the peaches. So I had old sheets hanging in front of these, and of course they're right up against the wall. And although it got very cold in the night, it was a reasonably warm day, and that wall will have absorbed some of that warmth, and I think it's offered just enough protection to the peaches. Now, their flowers passed a couple of weeks ago, so we're at the stage where we've got very small fruitlets, and I was quite concerned that they might have been damaged by the frost, but as far as I can tell they look absolutely fine, so I think we've got away with that. At some point I will have to come through and thin out these fruitlets, but we've got quite good fruit set, especially considering the number of dull days we had in March, but there's no sign of any damage to any of these fruitlets, so I'm hopeful that these are going to still produce good fruit. We also managed to save our first early potatoes. Now these were covered with 3 layers of fleece, and then the sheets that we covered the peaches with, they were draped down over the top of them as well, so they had lots of cover, and they seem to have fared quite well. So that's a quick look at some of the damage I'm finding in the garden. Now, I haven't seen that kind of damage at this time of year before. The black Hamburg grape does tend to start fairly early in the year, and especially in the greenhouse because it gets some warmer conditions, and that encourages the shoots to develop quite early. But at this time of year here in the south, I wouldn't really expect much more than a light frost. Of course, I would expect to get frost up until towards the end of April. I think our last frost date is, I think, towards the end of the 3rd week in April, in theory. But I would be quite nervous about putting anything tender out during April. But we're not really talking about tender stuff here. I mean, the peas can take rather cold conditions. A light frost is not going to bother those. But this sustained cold with the fierce cold wind, that can cause that drying out of the plant tissues, and I think that's at least the cause of the damage to the peas. Never seen damage to the vine before, so Yeah, that's a little bit disappointing, but as always, that's gardening. Not everything goes well in any one season. But that's all for this video, so thanks very much for watching, and bye for now.